Hello, this is Jake Beeman with Golden Fox Farms. Today we're going to take a look at queen replacement at French Hill Apiaries. Queen replacement was a big part of what I helped Mike with over the last 2 weeks of July 2024. This is an ideal time of year for requeening where he is. At this point in the season, production colonies are on the backside of their surplus flow, so interrupting the colony with a queen replacement won't greatly disrupt that colony's crop potential. Mike equalizes his production colonies in the spring and supers them as needed during the flow. At the end of their main flow, which kind of ends with sumac, production colonies with 5 or fewer boxes get requeened. That's his metric. 5 or fewer boxes gets requeened. With colonies being equalized in the spring, poor performance can be blamed on an inferior queen, justifying her replacement. Another perk of doing it this time of year is there is a preponderance of queens and drones for that matter. Earlier in the season, the queens are sold for a premium, often before they're even mated. They already know where they're going to get shipped to. As we get later into the season, demand wanes. This frees up some surplus stock for requeening his own hives that need it. Now, Mike uses a pretty labor-intensive method to replace these queens. It is not for the faint of heart. Let's get into what it is. The first step is to find and dispatch the queen. Now, I'm used to, at most, a double deep brood box back home. Finding the occasional double deep here was a godsend. Most of the time, we're digging through 5 boxes of frames for a queen. These are big hives. These colonies didn't have any queen excluders in them. The queen has free reign to go wherever she wants in them, and she often would. Now, with a double deep, you can just start in from the top, scoping for a queen, pulling out frames. You can't really do that in a 5 box hive. You'll just end up chasing the queen down to the bottom box. The MO here was to first blitz the colony apart, placing dividers between the boxes as you go. Kate would stack them vertically, I would bring multiple covers and scatter them on the ground. You would then start with the most promising box and go frame by frame through that box and then box by box searching for that queen. When you are lucky, you might find the queen in the first box or two. I also remember finding a number of queens in the bottom box on an outside frame and the occasional queen in the top box. Now, once the queen was found, she was cold. I started by pinching them because that's my normal practice, but that gets queen pheromones all over your fingers, and you'd end up with a bunch of bees amassing on your thumbs and fingers looking for the missing queens. I ended up switching to culling with a hive tool so the workers wouldn't be so obsessed with my fingers. We would record on the box what was happening, the bottommost box. We would note the queen culled and the queen's marking, be it color or unmarked. Second and third year queens could be encountered in these hives. Now for the actual queen replacement. Mike uses the push-in cage method and recommends it highly. A cage is made of number 8 hardware cloth with 3/4 inch long box legs. These are also available in plastic. Don't bother with them, use the metal ones. Now, I didn't get many great up-close shots of queen install while in Vermont. Frankly, we are busy working oodles of hives, but I was able to do such with a few hives back at home. You'd pick a frame from the brood box, whichever box that was. You'd want a frame that had a spot with both open comb and emerging brood. When you found that frame, you would shake or remove the bees from the frame with a brush, and you would put that frame on a flat surface to work on. You would take the push-in cage and put it where you would want it on the frame. Now, in this example of the push-in cage that I'm doing at home, I'm also using a California candy plug. This is normally something you'd use with a California cage. I knew I wasn't going to get back to this hive for several weeks due to travel. I needed these bees to release their queen on their own. It works. I don't think it's nearly as bulletproof of a method as the direct release method, but it's a risk that's out there. You would then take the queen cage, the Benson cage. and remove the plug from the non-candy end and place that underneath the push-in cage, and then you would watch for the queen to emerge. As soon as that queen would come out of the Benson cage, you would pull the Benson cage out and press the push-in cage in. And you would push it down until those legs hit the mid-rib comb of the wax. So the top of the cage would be floating about 3/8 off of the comb and sconce below. These frames would be returned to the hive, taking care not to dislodge the cage with the queen under it. Its position in the hive was marked on the exterior of the box with a piece of tape to facilitate its quick discovery later. The frame itself was also marked on top, so when we would get back into these hives, they were readily discovered. The hive would then be reassembled and left for 3 days. It would be marked with tape at the cage location, a brick standing vertically on top to indicate it was a hive that needed service, and finally the bottom box's notation itself that would have the note about the old queen's removal and the specifics of the new queen installed. That would include her genetic origin, P2, P3, or whatever, and the year, and Mike would just record the last 2 digits, so -24. So why use the push-in cages with introducing mated queens? While these queens are coming right out of Mike's own breeding operation, as soon as they are caged and stop laying, their pheromone production is disrupted. Pheromones are a very important and overlooked part of queen acceptance. By allowing the queen a protected space where she can start laying, she also starts producing the full bouquet of queen pheromones, greatly increasing acceptance. The bees that are emerging under the cage readily accept her and form her initial retinue. This method, with old queen dispatch immediately followed by mated queen install and laying, prevents the colony from going into a queenless emergency state and building queen cells. After 3 days, we return to the apiary for release. The bricks identify the hives, the tape identifies the box. We remove the boxes from the top of the hive down to the box with the queen in it. Here, a frame next to the cage frame was first removed, so the cage containing frame could be carefully removed without dislodging the cage. A lot of times, these cages would end up burr combed to the opposing frame because of how close they were, so you kind of need to ease it over with a hive tool. Having removed the cage-containing frame, you would check for two things. One, the queen's acceptance. We wanted to see a healthy queen doing her business without the house bees being hostile towards her. We would also eyeball the frame while we had it out. We would specifically look for eggs outside of the pushed-in cage. Having removed the prior queen now 4 days ago, we knew any eggs in that hive had to be laid after that queen was removed. So the only place we'd want to see eggs are underneath that push-in cage that had the queen we installed. If we saw eggs anywhere else, we knew we had a second queen in that hive. We would end up requeening 50 hives, and there's a very real chance you're going to encounter a couple of double queen colonies without knowing it. So if you just removed a queen and assumed all was good, you would accidentally condemn those few remaining colonies with their second queen still running around. If everything looked good, the pressing cage would be removed while the queen was on the comb. You would have to watch this. The queen would often run around the perimeter of the cage space. And if you remove the cage while the queen was there, often the queen would come off with the cage, which was a complication. If we had the queen busy on the comb itself when we removed the cage, she would stay on the comb and we could carefully reinstall that frame with the queen on it back into the hive. This is an extremely effective requeening method. Of the 50 colonies requeened, only one replacement queen was lost. On release, we knew she was both accepted and laying. Now, I did note that this is a pretty labor-intensive method. It requires 2 trips to the apiary. We would often have to resort to the use of a shaker box, which we'll discuss in a later video. And going through my video, I found Mike spent a whole hour finding and replacing one of those queens in a recalcitrant 5-box hive. It's a big time investment. However, this method is both extremely effective and thorough. Mike had absolute confidence the requeen colonies were both successfully requeened with a laying accepted queen, and the inferior genetics were replaced, which is very important for his breeding operations. And with that, we've reviewed how Mike handles requeening hives at French Hill Apiaries. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe. We'll talk about the torture that is a shaker box on our return. Until then, good luck and happy beaking.